Hey, Matt, this is specifically up your alley in the challenge. What is your opinion of the upcoming Star Wars land at Disneyland?
What is?
I want to go so bad.
I want to go. So,
what are your hopes and fears?
Is it at Disneyland or Disney World?
It's a both.
Ooh.
So, first up, and this is my like baseline opinion, is we're getting Star Wars land, but it's coming at a price.
Uh-oh.
Well,
I mean,
it's a discounted price.
Well, no. It's coming at a cost.
Yes.
That cost is that in order to build Star Wars land, they shut down the Big Thunder Mountain Barbecue. Now, the Big Thunder Mountain Barbecue...
I was only heard that Toontown is going away.
So,
yeah,
Disneyland.
Toontown's
World has like tons of room.
Toontown is garbage, and they should have just torn that out and put Star Wars land there. But they are not tearing out Toontown. Toontown is still there. They are actually using backlot area, and so the way the park is laid out, you've got Main Street, you've got the castle, you've got Fantasyland behind it, and then if you're sitting in the center circle in front of the castle, to your left is Frontierland and Adventureland and New Orleans Square and the Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island, now Pirate Island. And basically all the backlot area behind the Rivers of America have been torn out and are being replaced with Star Wars land. But in order to connect it to Disneyland proper, they had to tear out the Big Thunder Mountain Barbecue. And the Big Thunder Mountain Barbecue was a restaurant that you could, one of the like dining establishments at Disneyland that's not just like a food stand. And its whole thing was that it was all-you-can-eat barbecue. They would bring you buckets, literal tin buckets of meat. So you would get 3 different types of meat. You would get sausages, you would get ribs, and you would get barbecue chicken. That came with cornbread and beans on the side, and they would serve Arnold Palmers to drink. You had to book in a reservation, single cost to get in. And it was all you could eat for as long as you could eat it. So if you wanted them to bring you more buckets of meat, they would bring you more buckets of meat. If you wanted them to bring you more buckets of ribs, you would get more buckets of ribs. If you wanted more buckets of all 3, they would bring you more buckets of all 3. And you could just sit there and gorge yourself on delicious barbecued meat for as long as you... Buckets of meat.
Buckets.
While being served limitless Arnold Palmers to drink. And then you could finish it up with a half-baked cookie in a cast iron pan. This is gone now. It no longer exists.
It's gone, Ian.
Now, here's a couple...
It might still be in the Florida one.
Before we get to the Star Wars itself, I feel like the fact that I haven't heard of this up till now tells me that while it is unlimited, it might not have been great.
It was one of my favorite restaurants there.
Yeah. I've never heard of it either.
What it actually tells you is that people don't leave. They just stay there forever.
Oh God, that's where they get the That's not chicken.
That's where they get the meat from.
Yeah.
Also this.
Yeah. So
it's a closed loop.
So we're getting Star Wars land, but we're getting Star Wars land at a deep personal cost. Now that said, there are other good places to eat at Disneyland, so it's not like it's not literally the end of the world. But I really did like the Big Thunder Mountain Barbecue, and it was a staple of like every time I go to Disneyland, I gotta go to the Thunder Mountain Barbecue and get buckets of meat. So it has to overcome my attachment.
Engaging auto honk in 3, 2, 1, auto honk.
Sweet. It has to overcome my affection for the Big Thunder Mountain Barbecue. That said, it's neat. Apparently this week they announced that the Star Wars lands actually happen in like on a fringe world in the Star Wars universe, and they have now named that world, and it's a new world that we haven't been to before.
Good.
I'm looking forward to thank you for bringing the volume up. I'm looking forward to experiencing it. My girlfriend and I, just before Desert Bus, went on a 6-day, 5-night vacation in Disneyland before coming here. I literally had 1 day back in Vancouver before arriving at Desert Bus on the day we started. And we have basically come to the decision that we will be scheduling a trip back to Disneyland once Star Wars Land has opened. Like, it's the kind of place that you don't want to go more often than like every 3 years or so.
Yeah.
And at this point,
depending on who you are, I know some people who are like every year Disney
yeah, well,
World.
I find
There are
that
also people who live like right nearby that get like the discount tickets. So like every weekend it's like Disney World, Disney World,
yeah,
Disney World, or Disneyland.
I find that to be too much. Like, I don't need to go there that often.
I'm like.
The experience of it would be different if you lived there, right?
Yeah.
Like if you lived in California and it was just like, oh, it's the theme park that you go to,
It's like
Florida.
or Florida. That would be a different thing from like, oh, I have to plan a week-long vacation and fly to California if I want to go.
I knew people in New York who would have like annual trips to Florida.
To Florida,
to go to
Yeah,
Disney World.
there are definitely people who are way more into it than I am. But like, I really like Disneyland, but I get my fill of it, and then I don't feel like I need to go back.
Yeah.
So like, I would rather do a different vacation between now and then in like 5 years, once Star Wars Land has opened and the crowds have had time to die down.
And you get to and they open the Experience Hotel as well.
Well, so that's the thing is like we stayed at the Grand Californian when we went down, which is like the premier Disneyland resort that they have right now. It has its own access to California Adventure. You can enter straight from the hotel.
That must be a pristine entrance.
It is very clean. So like we stayed there. So the question, and we really liked it, and we want to go back. So the question at this point is like, do we want to do the Experience Hotel, or do we just want to stay at the really, really, really nice resort and spa? I'll have to talk to Megan about this, but I think there's a good chance that we would go, like 50-50, we would go either way.
You want to
I
join
I
Florida
think we
Land.
want to experience the hotel.
Once. Like,
Yeah.
That's one of those things, like, if you want to do it, just do it once, get it out of the way, and then you can pick where you want to go.
I personally feel confident enough that with the way Disney's been handling the Star Wars stewardship, that they'll do it justice.
Yeah,
as a world.
I don't have any doubt that they'll do it justice as a world. The one thing, so this topic did kind of come up between Megan and I while we were there, because Tomorrowland is an interesting place these days. Tomorrowland, when it was created, it was this like retro future, like aspirational world.
Well, it wasn't retro at the time. It was actually
it
futuristic.
It's retro future to us.
It was the World's Fair every day, and
Basically,
then they never updated it.
Well, they did update it, but they've lost the plot of Tomorrowland a bit. Because they built the People Mover, and then they took the People Mover away, and then they replaced the track. The track is still there, and then they put the rocket cars on it, but that ride failed, so they took it away, and now the track is just sitting there unused. In the
Autopia
is there, but it's
horrible anachronism.
Yeah, it is, and they updated the aesthetic of Tomorrowland in the 90s, and they didn't do a very good job of it, in my opinion. And of course, like Star Tours is there, which is a great ride, and like that's awesome.
But
They've
it's
got
kind of its own thing.
But it's kind of its own thing.
Yeah, Buzz Lightyear's
Space
targets.
Mountain is there, and Space Mountain holds up. Like Space Mountain is still really good. But what they need to do is they need to go back. They need to shut Tomorrowland down for a while.
Yep.
They need to move Star Tours to Star Wars Land and get it out of Tomorrowland.
They need to decide what Tomorrowland wants to be. Does it want to be a showcase of what the future can be, or does it want to be an idealized 50s version of the future?
And that's what I think they would be stronger arcing towards, is to take it back to like turn Tomorrowland into
a theme
like retro future theme park.
Because Epcot.
Space Mountain is there. Space Mountain can't move.
And shouldn't.
Theme it around Space Mountain. Make it. This is the future, circa 1975.
People walking around in silver jumpsuits and bubble helmets.
Yeah, which they sort of already have, but they've mixed the aesthetic with this like the future circa 1995.
And they've kind of decided
which doesn't work.
They've kind of decided that this is where the Marvel universe lives as well.
Yeah,
and
it's
like,
this weird patchwork. And the Autopia should be updated to electric cars.
Yes,
like
100%.
absolutely. It should not. They should not be lawnmower engine cars anymore. It should be electric. And like they could do this sort of like retro future aesthetic, and then still do the like it's the World's Fair every day, just through today's look at a 1950s lens on the technology of the
2017 sanitized version of 1950s.
Yeah. And like, if they did that, that world would be way cooler.
It just becomes yesterday's Tomorrowland.
Yeah. And and that's awesome. That's sort of what they're doing with everything else anyhow, where like Adventureland is like yesterday's Adventureland. It's safaris and Indiana Jones and Frontierland. I mean, literally every land is colonialism land of one form or another. But it's like they do have that sort of like sanitized look at the Wild West and sanitized look at the pirate adventures and like African safaris and just take that same idea and apply it to like this is space colonization land, and it works, and it would fit way better with everything else they have happening in Disneyland. So,
I just want them to bring the Tron ride from Shanghai to the States.
And they have the track. Why don't they put this on the People Mover track?
In the chat was saying they were going to put the Tron ride into the Florida one.
Yeah.
Poster update that we can't see
I would
because
go on
there's
a
an update on the
heartbeat.
screen yet.
Okay, so that's that is that
nice.
challenge.
Well, that's the last one.
So yeah, I have opinions about Disneyland.